Welcome to QUT News.
Hello.
The leaders of the two major political parties go head-to-head in a debate in a few hours. Polling shows the coalition is now gaining ground on Labor.
It's the first debate of the campaign, and both leaders are trying to woo voters in different ways. Labor is promising $7 billion to cut the cost of living, $4 billion of that to make childcare cheaper for families. For his part, Prime Minister Scott Morrison has been talking cybersecurity, announcing $156 million to train new experts in the field. And the coalition continues to ram home its economic credentials.
It's a choice about who can manage money and who can't. And I know if you can't manage money, you can't pay for dental care, you can't pay for childcare, you can't pay for aged care.
The latest poll suggests that the coalition, which started out the underdog, is gaining ground with voters and is now trailing Labor by 2%. 49 to 51.
They're recognising that the stark choice is before them about what our nation's going to look like over the next 10 years.
Scott Morrison remains the preferred Prime Minister amongst those polled, but Labor says its positive policies have also improved Bill Shorten's chances.
You know, that's why we're out there talking about dental care, childcare, health care, cancer treatment, school education. We've got a really positive vision for Australians.
It's expected there will be two more debates, with the last in prime time in the second week of May. Leanne Neeby, QUT News.
Looking to escape the election day mayhem on May 18 and cast your vote early? Pre-polling booths are now open.
Putting more pressure on the politicians. Experts estimate 40% more people are shunning election day in favour of pre-polling.
Younger people certainly are more inclined to take that kind of affordance. Some people do it out of necessity, and there are more of those people than used to be.
Candidates turning out to ensure they secure those crucial early votes. With more and more people opting to vote prior to the election, political candidates are realizing the importance of showing up for the pre-poll.
Political parties put a lot more effort into pre-poll, and they put a lot more effort into explaining to voters why it can be more convenient, easier for them to go and cast an early vote.
And while the pre-poll benefits the voter, it's not always the case for the candidate.
Political parties need to take a lot of account of, because what it means is that a large number of people vote before the campaign is even halfway through.
Experts are estimating by next year, more than 50% of voters will be casting their votes well before Election Day. Lukai Kesseling, QUT News.
Queensland's economy has been given what some may regard as a fail mark by a major finance group. Every year it looks at how the states and territories are performing.
The CommSec State of the States report takes into account key economic indicators, and it's not good news for the Sunshine State. When it came to retail spending, equipment investment, construction work and house financing, we rank 6th, followed only by Western Australia and the Northern Territory. On unemployment, we're 5th.
Queensland is just not producing the jobs required to lower our unemployment rate, and that really is on the back of not enough mining investment and private sector investment more broadly.
Economic and population growth is better. We're ranked 3rd. The state opposition says the poor overall result is the government's doing.
We need Queensland to be the economic powerhouse again. And what's Anastasia Palaszczuk's plan? Tax, tax and more tax. You cannot tax your way to growth in this state.
The Chamber of Commerce agrees more is needed.
So the state government can be more targeted in investment. Obviously skills is a big part of that, and also looking at areas where there's the more immediate need.
It's not news that the government necessarily wanted to hear. It has long maintained that the state is doing well in most areas that matter, and now faces mounting pressure. Dominic Elsom, QUT News.
There have been chaotic scenes at Australia's busiest international airports. A computer systems crash meant passengers faced long waits.
Thousands of international flyers were stranded in long queues at 3 major airports: Brisbane, Sydney and Melbourne. The small gate passport control system was down. Australian Border Force workers had to check passport manually, causing lengthy delays from 6 a.m.
40 minutes, 50 minutes, something of that nature, don't know exactly.
The delays caused frustration and anger.
It's pretty crazy. Yeah, people are getting a bit angry in there, but we're out now and we can go home to bed.
The Australian Border Force called in computer experts to try and fix the problem, and gradually brought SmartGate back online throughout the day. But departing passengers were advised to get to the airports early as the initial problem and a knock-on effect on departures. Additional ABF staff were called in to process passengers and to minimize delays.
In Brisbane, people seemed to be happy to wait patiently and showed minimum concern about the passport control issues.
And the situation had eased by mid-morning.
Just come back from Fiji. We didn't have any delays coming through passport control.
Well, no, we've only just arrived and we gave ourselves plenty of time and hopefully we won't be delayed for our flight, and that's the main thing.
Authorities are hoping they have finally solved the technical issue. Annie Penn, QUT News.
The chief sniper during the Lindt cafe siege is suing the New South Wales government over its handling of the attack. The sniper, referred to only as Sierra 1, alleges he and fellow officers were not allowed to do their job properly, and he has suffered psychologically since. Sierra 1 believes the lives of the cafe manager and a female barrister killed by the gunman, Men Monas, could have been saved.
Australia's unions are demanding tougher safety laws for workers. They've made it the catch cry of International Workers' Memorial Day.
Last year, 157 Australians were killed at work. Today, friends and colleagues gathered to remember them.
And we share in their sadness, their anger and their frustration when it appears that company profits have been put before their workers' health.
Unions say not enough is being done to hold employers accountable.
Queensland unions are calling for industrial manslaughter laws to be brought in throughout the whole of Australia.
This Memorial Day hit closer to home for Brisbane's nurses after the death of Salita Hanario last year.
QNMU is thinking about our member Salita Hanario, who was killed when leaving work late last year. She was leaving Prince Charles Hospital.
In Queensland alone, there have been 39 work-related fatalities, with another 15 deaths being investigated in the past year. Queensland and the ACT are the only jurisdictions which have industrial manslaughter offences, and some are calling for that to change.
In most places in Australia, employers would only be subjected to a financial penalty, and many write that off on insurance. That's just not good enough. It's an absolute insult to the families of dead workers.
Alexis Moran, QUT News.
Now, disturbing news about a child's playdate and a dark discovery. A Melbourne girl found 2 guns in a local park after a spate of shootings in the city.
Gunplay wasn't what one mum planned for her 5-year-old's afternoon at Fawkner Park. Her daughter discovered weapons used in the fatal shooting of a 41-year-old man the night before. SES volunteers searched some of the park for evidence Saturday morning, but came away empty-handed. The mum, who wishes to remain anonymous, says the park wasn't closed off in any way. It was an ordinary Saturday afternoon with friends until her daughter found 2 handguns covered by some leaves.
They could be still loaded, and that's the thing that scares me the most.
She wants to know why more wasn't done to secure the area.
I'm concerned with what are the police doing to keep our society safe.
Victoria has now seen 8 gun deaths in as many weeks in 6 separate incidents. 4 of the gunmen are still at large, and the state's opposition is calling the pattern an epidemic.
When you get people gunned down in Fawkner Park, you get people gunned down waiting to go into a nightclub. This is not the Victoria we need.
Police would not comment on reports the guns were found by children in a park. Alicia McLaren, QUT News.
Looking again at our main story. Political leaders tense up for their first televised debate, with climate change and expenditure the hot topics.
And still to come, a look at royal births throughout history. It must be close. Royal baby fever is gripping Britain and the world. Punters are placing huge bets on what Meghan Markle and Prince Harry will name their new boy or girl. The Duchess of Sussex is reportedly past her due date, so tonight QUT News takes a look at how the world has welcomed royal babies through history.
First,
came the fairy tale wedding, a happily ever after for Prince Harry and former actress Meghan Markle. And then came the news the world had been waiting for. A new royal baby was on its way, and the name guessing went berserk.
I would put money on a girl in Victoria. They could call her Tori.
Baby Sussex is the latest addition to a royal family which traces its roots back to 1066. In 1926, the crowds waited for a glimpse of Queen Elizabeth II on her way to her christening at Buckingham Palace. More than 2 decades later, we were introduced to Prince Charles. Then, the celebrations for the arrivals of Prince William and Harry. In turn, Prince William and Kate welcomed their 3 children in front of huge crowds. A new wave of royals is piquing the world's interest in the monarchy again.
Comparative to Wills and Kate, I think the Harry betting is significantly more at this stage, so 30-odd%. And now that is, in real terms, that's huge. I mean, we expect that by the end we'll take £1 million on it, which would suggest that the general public prefer Meghan and Harry.
Spectators have a flutter on everything from the baby's gender, weight, date and birthplace.
And something that we saw a huge flurry of bets on in November, so much so that we actually had to stop taking bets for a little while, was actually Meghan to have twins. That's still proving a really popular bet. It's odds of 10 to 1.
But the name remains the most popular wager.
The main names here at the top of the betting here is Diana, 10 to 1, red hot favourite, no great surprises there. Obviously all the connections are there.
I think for girl it's going to be Diana, and for boy it's going to be Arthur.
Put money on a girl just because they've got a bunch of boys running around. It's time for another one.
Tom Robson, QUT News.
Mozambique has been hit by torrential rain and flooding in the aftermath of Cyclone Kenneth. Rescuers have moved in to help people trapped by rapidly rising floodwaters. Cyclone Kenneth struck Mozambique's northern coast, killing 5 people and leaving entire villages flattened in its wake. There are now fears riverbanks could burst and leave vast areas underwater.
The hunt for more terrorists involved in Sri Lanka's bombings hasn't stopped. 15 suspects were killed in one raid, with tension still evident.
Sri Lanka remains on high alert since 253 people were killed in the terror attacks. Church services have been suspended due to security concerns. But fear couldn't stop the faithful from gathering to celebrate Sunday Mass.
Hundreds of our faithful have died, so today we are commemorating all the souls of the faithful departed.
We did pray for victims, but also to the whole world, and for the people, the bombers, they actually do not know what they are doing. If they really knew the depth of their sin, they will not do that.
Buddhist, Hindu and Muslim faith leaders joining residents for a candlelight vigil as the Archbishop of Colombo calls on the government to conduct a comprehensive investigation.
If it is sincere, they must have a thorough inquiry.
It comes as authorities continue to search for suspects involved in the attacks. Police raiding the headquarters of Islamist group NTJ on Sunday, with 1 man taken away by police. Alicia McLaren, QUT News.
Spain's ruling Socialist Party is claiming victory in the country's 3rd election in 4 years. Prime Minister Pedro Sanchez won't, however, rule a majority government. The party picked up 29% of the vote and will need help from regional groups to form a government. It's the first time since military rule ended nearly 50 years ago that a far-right party will control parliament.
Military men in colourful outfits have closed down more than 40 roads in Bangkok. The pomp and ceremony all part of a dress rehearsal as the country prepares to welcome its new king. The royal coronation of the 66-year-old monarch will run for 2 days and is considered the most important event of the year in Thailand. The king will be crowned on May 4.
To sport now, and last year's AFL premiers, the West Coast Eagles, have slipped out of the top 8 after a big loss to Geelong. In League, the Broncos and Knights celebrate long-awaited victories.
It was a weekend of highs and lows in the NRL. The Broncos found their gallop for the first time in 4 games with a 23-point victory over the Sharks. While Knights coach Nathan Brown finally has some breathing room after his side scored themselves a healthy victory over Parramatta.
They had plenty of purpose, plenty of intent. They ran hard.
They tackled hard, they got off their line hard. They've done everything probably harder than us. Real simple.
Despite swooping in for a victory against the Raiders, the Sea Eagles may have lost captain Daly Cherry Evans to injury. An awkward tackle leaving the Origin star with more worries than the scoreline. In the AFL, Geelong have shot to the top of the table with a decisive 58-point win over reigning premiers West Coast Eagles. The Cats clawed ahead with several six-pointers from champion 34-year-old Gary Ablett, who has been shifted up from midfield to half-forward.
I think we admire those ones that can take on a new role and show the world that they can play that one just as well.
Hawthorn pulled off a narrow victory against Carlton, going 5 points up before the final whistle to finish 93-88. Tom Robson, QUT News.
The weather details are next with Laura Daly.
And seaweed to suck the life out of the plastic scourge.
Time for the weather now, and it seems like winter is approaching with a gloomy week ahead. But first, let's take a look at today's temperatures in the southeast. Brisbane and the Sunshine Coast hit 24, with lows in the high teens. Elsewhere, Ipswich and the Gold Coast were a degree warmer. If you're planning a trip interstate, you'll be warm enough in Sydney, but rug up for Canberra, which is expecting a low of 5 to start the day. Melbourne, Hobart and Perth will see a top of 21. Darwin will be a lot warmer on 33. A closer look at the forecast for Queensland, and Cairns 29 tomorrow with a chance of rain. Townsville will get some showers in the same maximum. Inland, Mount Isa should see a bit of cloud and a top of 30. On Moreton Bay, winds will be easterly up to 20 knots and seas around 1 metre. The sun is getting up a little later each morning now, and you'll see it after 6:12 a.m. tomorrow. The outlook for the southeast suggests showers along the coastline with temperatures in the mid-20s. Over the next 3 days, Brisbane can expect more wet weather with a high chance of showers for the rest of the week, and temperatures around 25 and 26. So not too cold, but a little damp. That's the weather for now. Back to you, Laura.
It's more commonly found under the sea, or perhaps at your local sushi train, but suckable seaweed is apparently the new thing for long-distance runners.
Plastic, plastic, and more plastic. The London Marathon has been there and run that. In an effort to cull the sea of waste, the event has turned in a new direction.
So Ojo, it's a membrane made of seaweed that is biodegradable, but even it's edible, so you can just put it in your mouth and it's going to disappear. Cheers.
Thousands of runners given a sustainable alternative to plastic bottles during this year's event.
And this has all been about, at the moment, trialling it and seeing what consumers think about it. And actually they've been super interested, especially for racing events, I think, when they're just after that packaging-free burst of hydration.
The capsules were filled with the sports drink Lucozade and were a hit with those pounding the pavement.
It's like an explosion of funkiness, all in one go. Let's set me up for the last 2 miles. Yeah, it's absolutely fabulous.
Ojo says that not only do the membranes taste great, they're helping to save the environment.
We calculated that if we were going to use all the plastic bottles in the world and replace it for Ojos, we will consume 0.02% of the available seaweed. And you can farm it as well, so you can harvest or you can farm it, or you can take it from the coast.
The Ojo capsules take just 6 weeks to break down, in comparison to plastic bottles, which take up to 400 years to decompose. Tom Robson, QUT News.
That brings you up to date with QUT News. Goodbye for now.
Goodbye.